a call impelled to unfold in Judges 6. But this is actually the first part of the series, and the other two I haven't totally figured out where I'm going, but I do have the title, so I'll let you know. And it's all of a sudden not working. Is the cursor in the right spot? Nobody's back there. Oh no. Okay, there you go. God's glory extolled and retold, and then leadership, once eroded, grows cold. So it's essentially Judges chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 6, 7, and 8. Anyway, we're going to focus on the first chapter. Almost all of the first chapter. We're going to leave the fleeces till next time. So let's go. So we're talking about call, and so prevalent within our culture is what? Phone calls. It's not the same, but it could be. I mean, if we're called by God, we get the chance of whether we're going to choose or accept. And you see the little dot goes up, and we have those dots in our lives. The Spirit of God speaks to us, even if we're not one of His. His Spirit speaks to us in a myriad of different ways. Some people are more auditory. Some people are more visual. Some people are more picture-oriented. But God speaks to us in our individual way because He's a master communicator. And it would be a call that would change your life, wouldn't it? It just absolutely would be. Now, it was Monday, August 27th, 1984, where I actually made a phone call, and that's the number, 543-888-4488. That is no longer a number that I can call anymore, but that was the number I called that day. Forever changed my life. Absolutely forever changed my life. See, that was the day, and I remember this day, that exact date. That was the first time I ever asked a girl out. And I'm telling you, I was unprepared. I was 18, but I'd never asked a girl out because I don't know. Girls were scary back then, I guess, And I'd gone that long without thinking, I'd really like to get to know her. And then I saw someone, I thought, I'd kind of really like to get to know her. And I'd met her earlier that weekend. This was probably Sunday. And I had seen her, and we talked, and she told me of her plans. She was going to go away to college, and I was like, oh, wow, well, I guess I'll see you when you get back. I was playing it cool, and she's like, oh, man, going away to college, I guess, maybe after I get back, we'll see, maybe we can. But the more I thought about it, it's like, I really want to get to know her, and she's going off away to college, and she's going to be around a whole bunch of other guys. I think, well, I got to establish something before she leaves. So I called her up. And I'm telling you guys, in the history of asking a girl out, this is probably the weakest thing imaginable. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done this before, but I just knew I wanted to, and I didn't have a script. I didn't think about how to do it. So I called her up and hey, this is Steve. Oh yeah, oh cool, fun, and and I was just wondering if you guys might. And she's like, what? And I said, well, I guess I just want to know, what kind of things you like doing. She said, well, I like, I like go to the movies. Like, okay. And what else? Well, I guess I like going to the beach, maybe, walking my dog. And I said, well, do you like food? She said, well, yeah, I like food. Well, what kind of food? Well, I guess I like pizza. I was so pathetic. It was miserable. I mean, and the thing she remembers this person, she remembers the most is I had no volume as I was speaking. She said she had to press the phone up to her ears, like, what's he saying? and after I pepped her with all these questions, I said, well, okay, well, let's do that. And she's like, do what? I said, let's do all of that. So my first date that I asked the girl out, we, went to the beach. We had pizza and we went to a movie. And it was a considerably long date, but it was really fun. And I guess it worked out because the first girl I ever asked out was the one I married. And as pathetic as it started, it's worked out really well. I mean, apart from God, Kathy has been the most major influence on my life than anyone else in this world. And I count myself incredibly blessed that 2 weeks before she went to college, we started a relationship that has endured this long. And, guys talk about marrying up. I was a dirt clod, and she was beautiful, and anyway, that is a call that changed my life. And apart from God, it is the thing that has continued to change my life. I am a better man, and the man I am because of what God and what Kathy has done in my life. So let's talk about it. Now, this is a definition of calling by Os Guinness from his book, The Call, Finding and Fulfilling the Central Purpose of Your Life. Os Guinness is a great author, and I would suggest any of his books to you. I haven't read this one, but I like the quote, so I'm going to use it, all right? Here it is. Calling is the truth that God calls us to himself so decisively that everything we are, everything we do, everything we have is invested with a special devotion and dynamism that we live out in response to his summons and his service. You guys hear that? Let me put it this way. Let me throw Kathy in there. He said, and it's going to sound a little weird. Calling is the truth that I am calling Kathy to me so decisively that everything she is, everything she does, and everything that she has is invested with a special devotion and dynamism that she lives out in response to my summoning her and her service to me. Like, whoa! It doesn't really work if I say it like that, does it? But it works when God says that. When he says, when I call you, man, it is going to be so decisive in your life that when you choose to respond, everything you have, everything you do, every point of devotion is going to respond to me. That's a calling. And we're going to look at it in Gideon's life. Now here's a picture of something that's going wrong here. If you can see, they're in an act of worship. The guy up in top, that's an actual representation of a figure that was carved for Baal. And he was the Canaanite deity that was in the land as the Israelites were coming into the promised land. So he's the guy that was left over by the people who were still living there. And when the Israelites showed up, like God said, if you don't kick out their gods, if you don't make this place all about me, these gods are going to make you stumble. And they had a tree right there, and oftentimes what they would do with the tree is they would cut it and they would sculpt it, and it would end up looking like that. And that's what an Asherah pole would look like. Now, there's many variations on these deities because they were kind of littered all over, and every community had their own sense of, well, this is kind of what Baal looks like. This is kind of what Asherah, but they kind of followed this pattern. So this was a problem because God knows that these other idols, these other gods, would send the Israelites in the wrong direction. Now, this Asherah, she was considered the representation of God's wife in the Canaanite things. And so the Israelites saying, well, we don't have any representation of God's wife in the scripture, so I guess this will work. Why don't we just kind of adopt this one and bring them into our, and it's like, that would be kind of nice that, in a story that you would have a God, Father, God, and hey, there's a mom there. That works out. Now, Baal would be considered the son. So you have the Asherah pole and the Baal, and they were like mom and son. So that's kind of where we're at. But Baal was not the son of God, because the son of God had not shown up yet. He was known as the angel of the Lord. In the Old Testament, a Christophany, or the pre-incarnate Christ, when the Old Testament says the angel of the Lord, we understand that to be Jesus before he had revealed himself as the Son of God. So when in the New Testament, Jesus was saying, and they were getting the understanding in little bits of ways, and he said, I am the Son of God. And we're like, whoa. No, we haven't heard of that. And they hadn't. This was the revelation that was blowing the Jewish people's minds. The Son of God? Excuse me? I think we dealt with that when we were in the Promised Land. That's Baal. That's not, no, he's not part of us. And Jesus is like, well, he is now. I was born to be the Son of God. So I can understand some of the traditional Jewish people really having a problem with it, especially a guy named Saul, who is also Paul. Anyway, so here was the problem. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He had warned them about it. He said, don't do this, but they did it. And the Lord gave them into the hands of Midian 7 years. 7 years, these camel herds, these people would come, and it was horrible for 7 years. I want you to remember that those years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel. And because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and in the caves and in the strongholds. Right here we can see a picture of caves and strongholds that was in the caves of Carmel. And you could see, man, if someone was coming for you, that might be a great place to hide. Here's a little bit more of the topography of looking up into some of that area. And here you can see the caves of Carmel, and seeing back, there's the Jezreel. That's the Jezreel Valley. Great place, nice and flat, what every farmer would want. And that's where they would try and raise crops. And when the Midianites would come in, they would flee to these areas because this is like a natural fortification. And the Midianites was like, well, we just want the produce. We want to gather up all their livestock. We want to get everything we can. And these guys would hide in the hills, hide in the rocks, hide in the caves. And this is if you can see this area, let me see if I can see these areas right in here where it looked like these little trails and stuff. That's actually what like they do in China a lot of times. That was their best attempt in that rocky soil to do like a step, farming where you do it on a hillside and you do the various, you just have that little bit of edge and stuff, and that's the best. And this is what's left over from when they tried to do that in that area. Anyway, for whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They'd come up in their tents. They would camp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and would leave no sustenance in Israel, no sheep, no ox, no donkey. They would just take everything. And this was happening for 7 years. And we're in the book of Judges. And this was an interesting time in Israel, because in the book of Judges, this is before the kings. So what would happen is Israel was their own country, but they didn't have a government per se. They didn't pay taxes. They were a band that had that history of coming out of Egypt, but there was no central anything. And whenever there was a problem, God would raise up a leader to say, hey, here's the military. You guys go out and take care of things. And that's what judges were. They were heroes of the day. So it was a highly unique system. And later on, the Israelites were like, oh, man, we want a king. We want a king. Bad decision. This was working out well. But after a while, things would degrade, and then God would raise up a judge, and he would, get out there and militarily and take care of the people that were oppressing them. Anyway, so this is the situation we find it here. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, and they would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste to the land as they came in. They just, can you imagine 7 years of this? They're like, okay, maybe next year. Okay, we're going to raise some crops. We're going to, and then these hordes of people from the east would just come in and just take everything. It was like a camping adventure for them. I mean, this was wonderful. They didn't have to pack food. They would just steal everything that they could as the Israelites were scattering up into the rocks and hiding for their lives. Just a miserable, miserable existence. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian. And the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. They were homeless, helpless, and humiliated. And they had to be thinking, this is not working out. They had a period of having heroes, of these judges that would come up and and kick out and stop this madness from happening. And they're like, why does this keep happening? We keep cycling through. As you read the Old Testament, you read the stories, you go like, oh man, these guys just keep on messing up. These guys keep on messing up, and it keeps on getting bad. Why don't they just stay with God? Well, they didn't. They would let these other gods influence them. They would come in. And when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on the account of the Midianites, homeless, helpless, they cried out. They cried out. See, the brokenness of this world will fashion either a hard heart or humbled hearts. When things get tough, either we're going to respond to it like, we'll harden ourselves, or we'll humble ourselves and ask for help. We'll ask God for help. And God is waiting for that to happen. The brokenness of this world is people being mean, beyond mean. The brokenness of just how things happen. The weather can be horrible. It can bring you destitute. My brother-in-law lived through the Helene experience in Asheville, North Carolina. We've been in contact with him, and it's been hard. He's been without power. He wasn't one of the people who had their homes swept away. He wasn't inundated because he was on a hill, but it was hard. And he's been without electricity for a long time. He just got it back this last week. He's got water now that they've established, but you can't drink it. And they say, make sure you don't have any open wounds if you bathe in it. It's been a struggle. There for a while, it was hard for them to get out of the community to go somewhere else. They finally opened up a road and they went to Charlotte for a while and then came back. But this world challenges us to the point where we cry out to God. And God is waiting for our calls. God is waiting for a time where we call out to him and he says, I'm going to respond. And this is a story of how he responds. The Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up out of Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hands of the Egyptians, from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. He's reminding them of their history, of them being a people. And the prophet, he's sending a prophet, let's make this clear. Why all this bad, horrible stuff is happening to you? I saved you guys. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But you have not obeyed my voice. You're not listening to me. I need you guys to listen. So what is that? What's the prophet saying? Let's just put this down. That doesn't make sense. I didn't proofread. I said, I freed you from your oppressive slavery. You guys cried out. So, I listened and I freed you because that's what they were doing in Egypt. Say, Lord, get us out of this. This is 400 years. And our slavery here we didn't start out as slaves. We started out as honored guests. And then in this last Pharaoh and a half or so, and now they're killing our sons. Lord, help us. And they're crying out to God. And he delivered them from that. It's one of the most incredible historical events that have ever happened. And it made a splash on the front pages of every newspaper or clay tablet. Back then, this was a phenomenal event. It was not just for Israel, but for the ancient world. They took that many people out of Egypt, and there were all these plagues. Oh my gosh, don't mess with these guys. They had a reputation. When they came to the promised land, the people are going, oh, you're those people. You have a God like that. We're impressed, and we're scared. You guys are scary. Remember when they went around Jericho? The report from inside Jericho from Rahab is like, these people are freaked out and you are surrounding us. This is not going to go well. So they had that reputation, but they had lost that reputation because they let other idols consume their devotion. He's saying, I gave you the promised territory, driving out those who had it. This is what I gave you. And you're cheapening it by worshiping someone who was here before you, who I drove out to give you this land. These are not the gods that you would worship. I said, make no graven image of me. Well, what'd you do? You made a graven image of what you say is my son and my wife. No graven images. They will not help you. These idols in your life that you show devotion to and you care about so much, I will not share my devotion with them. You have to be devoted to me. Otherwise, this whole thing is wrecked. You're not listening to the one who saved you. I saved you. You're not listening to me. Fearfully, you are listening to those who will steal your purpose, kill the plan, and destroy the meaningful life I have for you. Because you are divided in your devotion. That's the message. Here's the solution. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Azbarite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Now, I really want to correct something. Gideon makes himself, or it seems like he makes himself an easy target. He's threshing out wheat in the winepress. And if we knew anything about the ancient, agriculture of the day, we would say, well, that's just about the stupidest thing anybody's ever done. Because under normal circumstances, you wouldn't thresh out wheat in a wine press. It doesn't make sense. When you're threshing out wheat, you want to kind of be on at least a little bit of a plateau, a little bit of a high spot. You want to throw it in the where the chaff gets blown away and the wheat falls down, and you separate the wheat that way. Now, if you're in a wine press, you're in a divot where things get pressed down so you can squeeze out, the grapes or the olives or, whatever they're pressing. So it's just not that effective, right? But, we've heard of like the, in World War II, the French resistance. I mean, they were in occupied, lands, right? They were doing the best they could. Gideon was doing the best he could with what was going on. This is not something to say, what a jerk, what a stupid guy, It's like, no, the guy was smart. He didn't want to be detected. He wanted to get the work done. It wasn't the best way to do it, but, you're trying to, get enough food so you can survive next year. And when the Midianite hordes will come. This was very humbling. But this was a strategic thing to do. This was smart. Listen, he wasn't getting detected. He wasn't, getting them marauding and taking his stuff because he was doing it in a clandestine way. He was doing it, stealthily. I'm not getting down on Gideon. In fact, we're Gideon to run out to Midian and say, hey, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm doing it on the top of the hill, and I don't care who sees me. The Midians were like going, hey, he's got stuff. Let's kill him and take his stuff. And God was saying, you guys are screwing up so bad. You guys are messing it up. I'm going to let Midian come in and just kind of maraud you for a while until you figure out, hey, God, we need your help, because you are not asking me for my help. You're asking Ashereth and you're asking Baal. You're not asking me for help, so I'm not giving you any help anymore. Gideon, if he was going to do something like that, he would have been killed. So it was very smart of Gideon to do it like this. Because if he would have stood up before God asked him to stood up, he would be going against God. Now, there is a time that we are to stand up. But we do it when God says. Otherwise, we're fools. And Gideon was no fool. He was part of the resistance. He was part of making this thing work. He was getting by. He was, doing things as he could. We got to do that sometimes until God says, "Hey, now is the time." And that's when you get to stand up. And his calling becomes apparent. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him, and he said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." I think Gideon was a mighty man of valor. But he couldn't express it under these conditions because God hadn't said, "Okay, now we need to use that strength that's inside you." It couldn't happen. But it was going to start to happen because God was going to call him out. And Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this thing happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds? And our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." Gideon knew the history. He wanted to see things that God did back when he saved the people from out of Egypt. He's like, "You're the God who did that. Why aren't we seeing these things?" We have expectations of what God will do. And God has expectations of what we will do. We need to be wholly committed to him. And then we can see what God will do in our lives. And Gideon's like, I've heard the stories, but I'm not experiencing it. Gideon was probably a young man. He'd been hearing these stories for, those 7 years. And maybe he enjoyed, just before those 7 years, a really great time of God, and he was really young. But now he's like, I'm threshing wheat in a wine press, God. This is bad. And everybody's starting to cry out to you because we're homeless, helpless, and humiliated. And now we're humble. And God can use a humble person. Let's keep going. And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian." I think God saw that Gideon had a strength, that he had this might in him. But Gideon knew, I can't do this alone. I have the faith to believe in a God who saved us from Egypt, but I need God with me to do this. The Israelites didn't do it on their own. They had miracles and wonders and amazing things. Where's God? Because maybe he could use me. And God says, I'm going to go. I'm going to send you. And he said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least, and in my father's house." Now, this is just classic. We remember the story of Moses, right? Moses is like, hey, pretty young guy, living in the palace, one of the sons of the Pharaoh. Hey, I'm a Hebrew, and I could be the deliverer. And his first, hey, Let me figure out. Let me take care of this situation. We got one Israelite, and he steps in and kills a guy. He's like, I'm a deliverer. That's what deliverers do, because he didn't know. And then he flees for his life 40 years, in the area of Midian. And then God shows up and he says, hey, I'm choosing you. And then Moses, what does Moses say? Well, I can't talk. I don't know how to do this. Why would you choose me? Because he had gone through a humbling process. Now, for Moses, it took 40 years. These guys, it took 7. But it's a common thing. When you get a sense of God calling you to something, you're like, oh, well, if you are in a place of humility, then you go, whoa, I can't do this on my own. And God says, exactly. You can't do it on your own. That's humility. The proud go, I'm going to do it on my own. And we see in the Old Testament and the New Testament, when people do that, man, it's a train wreck. But if you start out saying, whoa, me? Seriously? Me? Excuse me? You're God, and I'm not. There's people who are better than me. Why would you choose me? He says, because I choose the humble. I can't choose the proud, because the proud want glory for themselves, and the humble will give glory to me. And we'll see that operational in Gideon's life, especially in the next sermon. God uses humble people that says, I can't do it, but God can. And if you want to use me, we can do it together, but I can't do it without you. That's humility. And the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midians as one man. Now, are you seeing a pattern here? You remember with Moses and a number of people in the Old Testament, they said, well, I can't do this. And the response of God is, I will be with you. That is the strategy. That is the overarching strategy. God will be with you. And then he does it in a variety of ways. But that's the strategy. That is the bedrock of your faith, that God is with you. And when he says, I will be with you, God gets his way. And he says, I will strike Midian as one man. As one man. He's saying that there is going to be a unity that will happen through this process from the people who are called to you. That you're not going to scatter like individuals up into the hills. You are going to come out unified. And when you do that, you're going to take care of business. Things are going to happen. And I will get the glory, and you will get your freedom. And he said to him, if now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who speak to me. Please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring you out my present and set it before you. So Gideon's like, okay, this is an incredible thing that's happening to me. This is unusual. I'm going to need a little reassurance, okay? Let me worship you. Let me bring you the best of what I have, and let me present it to you. And if it's really you, I know how this goes down. I've heard the stories of how this happens. I know a little bit about, I'm going to bring stuff, my best stuff, and I'm going to offer it to you. I'm going to offer you food that I desperately need right now because these Midianites are taking everything. And I'm going to offer you something that I really need to sustain my life. But I am giving my life to you in worship. And I'm going to see what happens. If this is you, if this is really you, I know how this should go down. But let's find out. And he said, I will stay until you return. This is the angel of God. This would be Jesus. Theologically, from what we understand, this is Jesus sitting under the tree. He hasn't become the Son of God because he hasn't been birthed in Mary yet. But he is the Son of God, not yet revealed, but we call him the angel of the Lord. So Gideon went to his house and he prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from an ephod of flour. The meat he put into a basket, and the broth he put in a pot. And he brought them to him under the terebinth and presented them. So, okay, this has happened before, hasn't it? I mean, you know the stories of the Old Testament. This is kind of like, okay, when I do this, we're going to see if you really are God. And the angel of God said to him, take the meat with the unleavened cakes and put them on this rock. And pour out the broth over them. And so he did so. It's there. It's right in front of you. What's going to happen? And the angel of the Lord reached out, and the tip of his staff was in his hand, and he touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes, and the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. And Gideon was like, oh no, this is going down. This is the real deal. This is amazing. And then Gideon perceived that it was the angel of the Lord. It's time to freak out. And Gideon said, alas, oh Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. And throughout the Old Testament, everybody who's like, oh, I just saw God. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to be dead. That's it. It's over. Big deal. He's got a plan, but I'm dead and it's not going to work. He's totally freaking out. But the angel said to him, peace be with you. Shalom. Do not fear. You shall not die. Because God knew what he was thinking. He knew exactly what he was thinking. And he says, peace. I am the God of peace. Shalom is a bigger word than the cessation of activity. To have peace, it's a wellness. It's comfort. It's a rightness. It's shalom. It's more than just peace, but that's the first word that comes to our minds, and that's the operational, big defining term for it, but it means more. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, and he gets his name, the Lord is peace. This, I believe, is the moment that Gideon is saved. Gideon is saved. And he said, I will worship. I will. And back then, if you're going to worship God, you didn't have a song, you had an altar. So I'm putting together an altar. I'm going to do it. And he put out an altar to God. And it still stands to this day, and it belongs into the area of the Asburites, you know. And so this was incredible. But that night, the Lord said to him, take your father's bull, the second bull, 7 years old. Seven years. It's fun the way the scriptures bring that out, right? For 7 years, the Midianites have been trampling over their area. And for 7 years, they've had this bull. Started as a calf, and they hid it up in the hills. And they kept bringing this bull. What good is a bull? I mean, you can't get milk from it, right? I mean, cows, you can't really shave it much and get their hair and use. The bull is useful for what? You can kill it and eat it. You can have a hamburger, you know? Woohoo! But they kept that bull. They didn't make it into veal when it was really young. They kept the bull. Why else do you keep a bull? For sacrifice. This bull was most likely kept to sacrifice to Ashereth, Baal. God says, I want it. Pull down the altar of Baal that your father has and cut it down, the Ashereth that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord, your God, on top of the stronghold here, with stones laid in due order. How do you like that? God is saying, thank you. I think he's saying thank you. You spontaneously made a place of worship. You created an altar for me. Now, I want you to take that place of worship. So he says, take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the Ashereth that you shall cut down. So Gideon took the men, took 10 of his servants, and did what the Lord had told him. And because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do so by day, he did it by night. He was afraid, but he was doing something. That fear is only a problem if it keeps you from doing something. And he was afraid of his family, and he was afraid of the people of the town. But he did something. It's not wrong to be afraid. If that fear keeps you from doing what God has asked you to do, then it's a problem. I've done lots of things in my life that was like, oh man, I'm so freaking out right now, but I'm doing this anyway. That's not wrong. I'm not ashamed that I had fear. Fear was real. And the next time I do it, it's not as scary. And the next time, and then you grow through fear, through that fear, the fear of your family, the fear of, people around, but it's not a big deal. God doesn't have a problem with it because he was doing it. Now, if God said, do it by day, and he did it by night, that would be a problem. But God gave him okay, yeah. And we are never told that God had a problem with him doing it this way. It works out. And he did it by night. And when the men of the town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Ashereth beside it was cut down. And the second bull was offered on the altar. It was altar that had been built, and they said to one another, what did they say? What did they say? They said, who has done this thing? Who did this? Because the community that Gideon was speaking to, they weren't on board. They were not humbled. They still wanted it. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing this. I know we're just getting blasted every year. It's been 7 years, but let's keep making these sacrifices to Ashereth and Baal, and honoring our heritage. We got out of Egypt, and let's keep doing that. I mean, it seems like the more gods we have on our side, the stronger we are. And the God of the universe, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, he says, nope, you are weaker if you decide to fortify yourself with all these various gods of the land you're living in. Nope, you are not stronger the more gods you have. Nope, I am the one and only true God. You will water it down, you will make it weak if you invite anybody else to the party. He said, my relationship with you is like a marriage. 3 doesn't work. 4 doesn't work. It's only you and me. Nobody else is invited. It can't happen. We know that instinctively by marriages. No one gets involved and invited to that party. It doesn't happen. So they were asking the question, who did this thing? Because it happened at night. We were sleeping. We show up. Everything's broken down. And hey, who said that you could sacrifice the bull? What's going on here? This is not the time. We don't sanction this. When God has dealt with us, and we are placing him number one, and he's asking us to commit acts that defile the idols of your current culture, you cannot expect them to be happy about it, because they have been placing devotion, they have been investing life and energy into these false gods that they think will help them. And when you say, not going to happen anymore, I'm wrecking this thing, the Ashereth is going down, I'm using it as fire on the altar of God, and I'm destroying this idol of Baal in your presence, people are not going to be happy that their idols are being wrecked. They will absolutely not be happy. They will be, well, let's find out how unhappy these guys are. After they searched and inquired, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. The men of the town said to Joash, bring out your son, that he may die. For he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Ashereth beside it. Okay. They hated him enough to kill him. It's like, he was doing the right thing. Gideon was doing the right thing. This is not fair. This is not right. They want to kill him now. Gideon's trying to save these people with God's help. He's the man to do it. He's the boy to do it. He was a young man. But when we are transformed by God and And our buddies call us up, hey, dude, why don't you come out with us? We're gonna get so wasted, and we're gonna go down to that one place, with a place where, yeah, this is gonna be awesome, just, let's go. And you say, no, my life's really changed since I met God, and I'm just finding that stuff doesn't add to my life, it takes away. I'm not doing that anymore. You're like, you're stupid. What are you doing? You're wrecking our fun. We always have fun with you. And, hey, if you want to be the designated driver, hey, why don't you just do that? He's like, dude, I'm not going to the places you want me to go. I'm not doing the things you want me to do. I'm going to be late for church if I do that. Church? What? Dude. Man, you like lame, no fun. What a jerk. You are confronting their idols. You're confronting their way of coping with life. They have no purpose in their life. They think it's all about just having fun. They don't know the adventures that God can have them on. That how their life will get progressively better as they follow him. They don't know how he can clean up the crap and the dysfunction and all the things that are happening in our lives, and we won't ever get perfect and we'll move forward, but he doesn't know how he can redeem your life. They don't know because they're blind, and that's what God says, they're blind until I open their eyes. And so people are going to hate you if you turn to God and start doing the things he's asking you to do, because it will wreck the idols. It will show them that there's a better way, and they don't want it. Maybe some of them will. That's what happens sometimes. But Joash said to all who stood against him, you will contend for Baal, or you will save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for him. Let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. This is Gideon's first convert. Is his dad. His dad's saying, no. I'm seeing in this something that is right. I'm seeing that this is the right way to go. This was his dad's idols. This was his father's statues. These were his stuff. This was his bull. And he's saying, there's something right here, and you have threatened my son's life. And I'm saying, no, these gods are not worth my son's life. There's a better way. If he is a god, if you think this God is the right God, this Baal, this Ashereth, if you think this is the right thing, let him defend himself. And if he can't, we're going with Jehovah. We're going with Yahweh. He's going to be our God. Therefore, on that day, Gideon is called Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he broke down his altar. It's like, okay, this is it. This is all on you. This is all on you so much. We're going to change your name, dude. When we talk to you, we're going to say, okay, hands off. Baal, if you want him, he's the one who did it. He's the one who did it. He's the one who took down the statue. He built the altar. He he took things that were devoted to you and he made them Yahweh's. This is it. If you want them all, there he is. And Gideon took on that name. And they would call him that from time to time in the Bible, or they'd call him Gideon or, Jerubbaal. And like, yeah, I'm the one who did that. So, really, that's almost all of chapter 6. Impelled, a call that was impelled to unfold. And we see God working with Gideon to bring about all this, the salvation of the Israelites at that time. He was the judge in all the judges. If you read the book of Judges, he is just the most unique character. I mean, there's some judges only get like a sentence, or one of the judges, like, well, I mean, the dude was so tough, he took the jawbone of some animal, of an ox or thing, and he killed like 6,000 people, It's like, okay, and that's all the press he gets in the Bible. But he was a judge. Samson gets a lot of play in Judges because he had such a wild life, but Gideon is so unique. And we get a long story, a long arc of what happened with Gideon, and it's some very interesting things, very interesting dynamics, and we'll see more of that as I get to preach next time. But what do I want you to take away? We all have a call, and we all have idols in our lives, and God is going to say, I want you to do something for me. And one of the first things what you will have to respond with is worship of him. And then you need to find out those things that you are worshiping other than him. It's the things that drew your attention, your affections, and takes you away from your devotion to God. Because God is absolutely still calling us to devotion in him. In the Old Testament, God would pick out people and say, I will be with you. That was the old covenant. The new covenant is Jesus saying, I will never leave you. We've got something better of a promise. Jesus is a friend that will stick closer than a brother. So, I expect from this sermon that you guys will go out and do great deeds. Because that's what God calls us to. Now, will it be as flashy as some? No. Because it's your life. But there are people that need to know what you know. There's people that need to know the idols that you've defeated in your life. There are people that need to find the hope of defeating those idols too with God's help. Let's pray. Father God, I want to pray not only for your gift of Gideon as an example to us, but Lord, I also want to pray over the meal. Lord, we get to celebrate in a way that's fun. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to gather together, enjoy each other's fellowship, and be strengthened by that. One of the things that we get to do is be strengthened and encourage each other in the way that each other is following God. And sometimes words are said, and sometimes just being together is enough. So, Lord, we thank you for who you are and what you're doing. Lord, remind us. Show us. the things that interfere with our relationship with you. And Lord, help us to deal with them directly, with great violence, and obliterate them with your help. In your name, amen. All right. Sorry about, I didn't even know I wasn't being projecting. How long did that happen for? Did that happen for a while? It was short. Okay. All right. Well, God bless you. Go get some food. Have fun. Have a great week.